Welcome to the Daily Insider right here on VegasInsider.com. I am Kevin Rogers. It is Friday, May 14th, 2021, and the NBA regular season is winding down. Sunday is the final day of the regular season, but very interestingly enough, only two of the seeds have been clinched. Now, that doesn't mean playoff berths, just seeds. And that's the Celtics as the 7 in the play-in game in the East, and San Antonio as the 10 in the West. Everything else is still up for grabs as far as seedings all over the place. We know that in the East, there's only one spot remaining. That's the 10th seed. It's either Washington or Chicago. Wizards are up 2 on the Bulls with 2 to go. So Washington needs to win in one of its final 2 games. They play Cleveland tonight, and the Wizards will be in. The West, all 10 teams are spoken for. But the Blazers and the Lakers, they are still up in the air as far as who's going to be in the play-in game and who is going to be in the top 6. And the Blazers dealt a tough loss last night by the Phoenix Suns. But we'll get to all the NBA in just a moment, also all of the baseball. And it is a big weekend coming up here at Vegas Insider. And, of course, just in sports, as we have the Preakness Stakes coming up tomorrow. We have plenty of previews on that race. And also UFC 262 takes place as well. And you can find all the odds and the previews there, and we'll talk about all of that coming up in just a little bit. But first, want to congratulate Juan Sanchez. He is the winner of our Daily Insider contest from Thursday. He had the Clippers under 220.5 against the Hornets, and that one got scary in the third quarter. There were 70 points scored in the third, but a bad second and a bad fourth quarter, and it was an easy under winner for Juan, and he wins the prize of 7 days worth of a handicapper selections, $100 value here at Vegas Insider. And like we told you, you can win this contest, and we have it daily from Monday through Friday. You can only win once a week. So if you win during the week, chances are that, even if you do win your best bet, that you have to wait another week to be eligible to win the prize. So the way you play in this contest, it's very easy. You have a Vegas Insider user ID. You put that in the comments below this video, along with a best bet for today, whether it be Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL. It could be a first 5-inning bet. It could be a player prop. Pretty much everything is open. It cannot be a live bet. It's got to be before the game. And you put your user ID, you put your best bet. The best bet has to win. That's the key. If you lose, it doesn't really matter. If you do not have a Vegas Insider user ID, that's fine too. You go to the big yellow register button in the upper right-hand corner, click on that, and you go to free membership, register now. It's free to register and be a member. You don't have to pay anything. You create your user ID and password, your email address, and your name and phone number. That's the way we get in contact with you. That's why we want that information. And then you'll be all set. Also, make sure you're a subscriber, too, to our YouTube channel at Vegas Insider. So you can register there if you do not have a Vegas Insider ID. And if you do, don't worry about that step. You just put the best bet and your user ID in the comment section below, and you'll be eligible to win the prize, the daily prize of 7 days of a handicapper selection, one handicapper of your choosing at VegasInsider.com. It's a $100 value. All right. Let's take a look at, let's start with some NBA. We'll go through that considering we're down the stretch now in the regular season. And let's look at last night's action. And just like I had mentioned a moment ago with Juan, who won our contest, the Clippers beat the Hornets 113-90. The Clippers continue on this long stretch of unders as a road favorite, and I believe it's like an 8-1 run now at the under. They hold Charlotte to 90 points, but look at that. 23, 24, 13 in 3 of the quarters. And the other quarter, the third, was 30. So if you had the over in this game, 54 points in the first, all right, you're a little bit off track, but it's not bad. Then the Clippers put up 13 in the second, and then they put up 40 in the third. This is the thing about the NBA that's so frustrating at times. But then in the fourth, it goes back to 42 total. So game stays under. Clippers 113-90 winners over Charlotte. The Hornets are still going to be in the play-in tournament. I mean, I hate saying teams are in the playoffs when they're not really in yet. But Charlotte right now is the 8th seed in the East. Things can still flip. If Charlotte ends up the 8, they'll go to Boston for the play-in game coming up likely Tuesday. Charlotte and Indiana are tied right now at 33 and 37. So whoever comes out of that, the 8 seed will have the 2 shots at one victory to get into the playoffs. Now, Indiana, they're the 9. If they end up finishing as the 9, they'll get a home game, but they'll have to win 2 to get in the playoffs because they would host Washington right now, but Indiana can still jump or flip with Charlotte and become the 8 and then get into that 2-for-1 situation. So speaking of the Pacers, they lose to the Bucks 142-133, and you see the total never in doubt there. 242, doesn't matter. 77, a 70, a 70, and you had a bad second, which a lot, when you're, excuse me, when your worst quarter is 58 points, that shows you that this game was out of control. And Milwaukee closes a 9.5-point favorite. Malcolm Brogdon is still hurt, and the Bucks end up failing to cover as a 9.5-point favorite. But Milwaukee's only 2 back of Philadelphia for the top spot in the East. Granted, all these teams have basically 2 games left, so looks like the Bucks won't catch Philly. They can still pass Brooklyn, and that's big for the 2 because you want to get that possible home court in the second round if you have Nets-Bucks, and we saw Milwaukee beat Brooklyn twice at Fiserv Forum earlier in the month. So for Milwaukee, I'm sure they want to get that 2 and pass Brooklyn. And the Nets, again, they're still waiting to get their big 3 back because James Harden's back, but Kyrie was out the other night. Atlanta beats Orlando 116-93. Would have thought the Magic would have put up a better effort last night. They didn't. And Atlanta now, they're the 4. They right now are the 4. They're a half game ahead of the Heat for the Southeast title and also for home court in the first round. So the Hawks playing well down the stretch. They have 40 wins in the season. The Knicks rally past the Spurs 102-98, a game that easily stayed under. It was 216. It was 38 points after 1. I mean, shoot, you had a 61-point third. Didn't even matter. Still never really was threatened. And the Spurs were up in that game in the second half. And the Knicks came back, and they end up winning. They don't cover, but New York, they are, again, in the top 6, so they don't have to worry about the play-in tournament. The Knicks can still pass the Heat, but they lose the tiebreaker to the Heat. So that's something to keep an eye on. Both teams at 39-31. And New York right now, they would face Milwaukee in the first round. New York's beaten Atlanta 3 times. So I'm sure they want to get to the 5 and play Atlanta and not have to play Milwaukee. Because, sorry, Atlanta, there's a major class difference there between the Bucks and the Hawks. So that's where the Knicks are at. Knicks are 23-11 at home. I mean, that's a great job by Tibbs. A really good job. At San Antonio, they're locked into the 10 in the West. And they will play either at Memphis or Golden State coming up in the play-in tournament, and we'll talk about that matchup coming up in a little bit. The Heat end up knocking off the Sixers 106-94. Game wasn't even as close as the final score indicated. Ben Simmons didn't play. Udonis Haslem played for a few minutes and got ejected for throwing a finger in Dwight Howard's face. But the Heat have played well, too. 39-31. They won 4 straight. And they had a bit of a rocky start to the season. You know the Heat want to get a shot at Philadelphia again. They do in the playoffs. And Philadelphia's the 1 now, and the Heat right now the 5, so they can get past Atlanta, assuming that's the matchup. Then you could get Heat Sixers, which would be a highly contested matchup. Memphis holds off Sacramento 116-110. That game barely stays under 227.5. Sacramento now 15 straight seasons they are out of the playoffs, which I don't know if you can do that anymore in the NBA. Like, to be that bad. I know Minnesota's not too far behind, but Sacramento, man, you can't even just sneak. I mean, you have 10 teams now in the playoffs. I mean, they have 2 more spots. Call it if it's playoffs or not, the play-in tournament, but you have 2 more spots, you still can't get in. So the Kings, that's another under for them on the road. They have a really good under run to close out the season. And I believe it was 13-4 going to the Pacers game. So let's just really quick look at that. Oh, this is the final road game for the Kings. 0-1, 0-2, 0-3, 0-4, 0-5, 0-6, 7, 1-7, 1-8, 2-8, 2-9, 2-10, 3-10. So we'll call that 10-3 to the under. There's a lot more unders here I didn't even include. They're on a huge under run, the Kings on the road. Now, to close out the season, they have Memphis again tonight on the road. Toronto lose at Chicago, and I know the Raptors are totally not even, they're not even close to what they were a few years ago winning the title. It's amazing this team won the title 2 years ago, and granted they had Kawhi Leonard, but Kyle Lowry, Van Fleet, Siakam, everyone's hurt on that team. They're just totally beat up right now, and they're just crawling to the finish, the Raptors. They actually came back in this one. They were down by almost 20. They got it to 11, 12, and they could never really get closer, it seemed like. But the Bulls end up beating the Raptors for the 3rd time this season. Chicago still holding on to a little bit of hope. 2 back of Washington with 2 to go for that final spot. Chicago's probably not getting in. And look, they had Zach LaVine out for a little bit due to COVID stuff. Chicago lost a lot at home this year. I mean, Billy Donovan, he's still a quality coach. And he made the right move going to Chicago. But we'll see what happens over the next few years. But they just dug themselves a little too big of a hole to get in the playoffs. Denver, how about this one? They beat Minnesota 114-103, closed at 2. Look at that 4th quarter, 36 points. That they were rolling along. First quarter, 61, second, 54, but the third. Minnesota, the one thing I'll give them is they've been competitive down the stretch. And Minnesota is not going to the playoffs. Right now, they have the 3rd worst record in the West. And they can thank Oklahoma City for just totally being terrible over the last month or so. But Minnesota has been competitive, so I'll give them that. But they end up losing that game 14 in the 4th. Isn't going to beat anybody. Phoenix holds off Portland 118-117, and the Suns get a couple free throws in the end. That game goes over the total, or actually it stayed under, went up to 237. That total moved up during the day, so it depends on what you got it at. It closed at 237. It was around 233, 234, and it kept moving up. So if you had that early number, you lost in the total because you had 73. If you got all the way up to 237, you got lucky and you won. But Phoenix ends up winning. They beat Portland for the 3rd time this season, but they don't cover in this matchup. And Portland's winning streak comes to an end. But Portland right now, they're the 6 in the West. And obviously the 6 is very important because if you fall to 7, you're in the play-in tournament. If you're the 6, at least you get a best of 7 to start off. And Portland now is a half game behind Dallas going into tonight's action. Dallas gets Toronto at home. And look, the Lakers right behind the Blazers. Portland also, you're the 6. Who do you play in the first round? As of now, the Clippers. So it's not about pick your poison. Portland's lost 3 times to Phoenix. And then you have the Clippers too. So it's not exactly, one or the other that you're really looking at if you're the Trailblazers. It's just you're going to have to deal with whoever's there. All right, let's look at tonight's NBA, and you have a lot of very high numbers. Washington laying 8.5 to Cleveland. They've beaten Cleveland twice this season. Bradley Beal out again for the Wizards, and Washington a win, and they're in. Simple as that. And that's a really good comeback story for the Wizards. And I know they're 32-38. It's not a great record, but they were dead in the water. It seemed like early on in the season would have worked out with Beal and Westbrook, but Russell Westbrook has done a good job of carrying this team of late. And I know they lost both games to Atlanta, but still. puts up the numbers. And no matter what people say about him, he's still an excellent player. And the Wizards, I don't know how the tiebreakers work right now, but Washington is one back of Charlotte and Indiana. I wonder if, with 2 to go, depending on how things go, I wonder if they can jump both those teams and move into the 8. So that's kind of curious because Charlotte plays the Knicks and Washington. Oh, Charlotte plays Washington to close out the season. So I wonder if Washington wins the final 2. If they lost twice to Charlotte this year, so that may not happen. Well, I mean, if Charlotte loses both their games, they lose to the Knicks and then lose to the Wizards, Washington wins both, they jump Charlotte. So there's still an outside chance the Wizards could pass both of them and move into the 8 and then play Boston in the first round. That'll be interesting. Denver and Detroit, and the Nuggets, an 8.5-point favorite against the Pistons, and we know Detroit has totally pulled the plug on this season. They're 20-50 so far in the campaign. It's not the worst record in basketball. Houston has the worst record right now. But the Nuggets off that win last night over the Timberwolves. Denver, they're probably going to end up being the 4 when it's all said and done. They can't go lower than the 4. But they're one back of the Clippers with 2 to go. So you wonder if Denver's going to try to jump them for the 3. But they'll get home court in the first round, the Nuggets. Utah and Oklahoma City. Utah laying a couple touchdowns there on the road. And Utah on the verge of getting the number 1 overall seed in the NBA playoffs, home court all throughout. And they're 50-20 right now, a game ahead of Phoenix, so they really needed the Blazers to win last night, and that would have helped the cause for the Jazz, but right now they're on the goal line to get the number 1 seed, and they're playing Oklahoma City tonight, laying 14.5, and they should win that game, obviously. Orlando's at Philadelphia. Magic way out of it. Philly 1 up on Brooklyn, and both teams playing without rest here. I mean, the Magic, again, they're just playing this thing out. Philadelphia, 13.5-point favorite. We'll see if Ben Simmons plays tonight. Clippers and Rockets. LA laying 10.5. Houston, they've covered 4 straight, all as a double-digit underdog, and they hung around a lot of those games. They hung the last time they played the Clippers at home, and LA on a back-to-back. They've been great on back-to-backs this season. And Houston, look, again, they've been out of it, and they traded Victor Oladipo. John Wall's been hurt. Eric Gordon's been hurt. Christian Wood is hurt. But the Rockets, I mean, I hate to use this term, but they're trying, and they're putting out at least some semblance of an effort, which is good. And they're not just mailing it in like Detroit is. I mean, Detroit's the one team that's mailed it in as opposed to the others, because Orlando has no talent on their roster. They traded away everyone. Oklahoma City has no talent, where Detroit has some players, but I mean, I know they traded Blake Griffin away months ago to the Nets, or they released him, or whatever the case was, and he went to Brooklyn. But they have Jeremy Grant, they have other players on their team, and they just sit these guys a lot. So, Detroit's kind of the one team that's really tanked. The Kings and Memphis, they play tonight at FedEx Forum, second straight night. Grizzlies beat the Kings last night, and we'll see what Sacramento does here since they were eliminated. Memphis is in. Now, Memphis plays Golden State on Sunday, and that is for the 8th spot, the coveted 8th spot in the West. Now, both teams are in the play-in tournament, but the key is get to the 8, 2 shots to win 1. You finish 9th, you get a home game, but now you got to win 2 to get in, and that's not going to be easy. Memphis and Golden State split their 2 matchups this season, so basically Memphis loses tonight, Golden State loses tonight. Any combination doesn't really matter because they'll play each other Sunday, and the winner of that game will end up being the 8. So keep an eye on that for the Grizzlies if they decide to not even take their foot off the pedal, but say, look, we're focused on Sunday. That's the game that, again, changes our whole season. And you look at New Orleans and Golden State, the same thing. That line opened at 5.5, dropped all the way down to 2. Steph Curry could miss tonight. Draymond Green could miss tonight. Wiggins could miss tonight. They can sit everyone out. Steve Kerr could just say, forget it. We have nothing to play for here. Let's wait till Sunday. And that's our start of the playoffs in a sense. So New Orleans, no Zion. Brandon Ingram, I saw was questionable. I don't know what his deal is now, but the Pelicans are all beat up. They're out of it. And I don't know if Stan is going to, what he's going to do with that. I mean, New Orleans, they've been a pretty good ATS team down the stretch. Toronto and Dallas, the Mavericks laying 14, and Dallas right now the 5. So I'm sure they want to stay in that spot, not fall down to 6. And Toronto's obviously way out of it. Now let's look at baseball for. Let's look at today's baseball. We can review yesterday's as well. And the let's take a look. San Francisco and Pittsburgh, they meet up at PNC Park. The Giants beat the Pirates last night, low-scoring game. San Francisco laying a ton of Kevin Gausman on the mound. And I said this yesterday with the Pirates, that they had a decent start. They're going to be a fifth-place team in the Central. But right now they're kind of showing their true colors again. Not a lot of offense. They lost 2 of 3 to the Reds in the last series. And them as this big of an underdog, man. The Giants, hey, I'll give Gabe Kapler a lot of credit. People question him as the manager of the Giants when he got hired. Why are you getting this guy? They have a nice mix of veterans and young guys. They don't really have big names in their rotation like they used to, but they're getting the job done. And these are games San Francisco has to win because the Dodgers will eventually make a run. And now that the Dodgers have taken a little step back recently, you got to pile up as many wins as possible because the Giants will play the Dodgers eventually, and that's going to be a huge test for them. And when San Francisco this week has beaten Texas a few times, Pittsburgh, you've got to win these games and just collect the wins and then worry about the Dodgers and Padres later. Even though the Giants have played the Padres a couple times this season and seen some success against them, you still got to play the big boys and play the world champion Dodgers, your hated rivals, as opposed to your like rivals, which really I don't think exists. Atlanta's at Milwaukee. We call it the Hank Aaron Bowl when these teams get together. And the Braves off an 0-6 run against Toronto. They just got swept at home by the Blue Jays. They lost 3 in Dunedin against the Blue Jays earlier. And now they'll try to come back. Ron Acuna Jr., he's questionable, the leg injury. Drew Smyly has not exactly been the ace of this Braves pitching staff. They're 1-4 in his 5 starts, but they won his last start against Washington. Adrian Hauser's coming off a 10 strikeout performance against the Marlins his last time out. He's a little up and down. I feel like everything points to Atlanta here, but I do like Milwaukee. That people are going to want to jump on the Braves in the just because status. But Milwaukee, they just got shut down by Jack Flaherty yesterday in the Cardinals. And Flaherty, even though he is still behind the likes of Jacob deGrom and Corbin Burns, I mean, he's had a great season so far. He should be in Cy Young consideration. The Cardinals have won 7 or 8 of his starts already. So that was a really good pitcher they faced yesterday. Wade Miley and German Marquez on the mound tonight. And the Reds, Luis Castillo continues to be terrible for Cincinnati. He got racked in the first inning last night. Gave up 3 runs. Cincinnati was down 10-0 in that game. They scored 8 runs in the 7th or 8th inning last night to make it 10-8, and then Colorado scored a few to make it 13-8. Rockies, again, they're good at home, and it's nothing new, but they, for as bad as they've been on the road, I can't say they've been so great at home because they're a little above 500 at home, but Colorado continues to be competitive at home. Now, the Rockies are a short favorite here. Marquez has not been great. I mean, he was all right against the Cardinals the other day. He's been racked by the Giants a few times. But Wade Miley, though, this is his first start since the no-hitter that he threw against the Indians last week. So now he goes to Coors Field, and that totals 10.5. So we'll see what Miley does here in the post-no-hitter. And just thinking back, Carlos Rodon, he was a winner in his next start after a no-hitter. Joe Musgrove wasn't for the Padres. John Means got a no decision. The Orioles lost to the Mets, but he still pitched well. That was an under. And I don't care if it wasn't technically a no-hitter. Madison Bumgarner, his no-hitter against the Braves. The Diamondbacks won that start, his next one against the Rockies. So the it's been the pitchers have pitched well. Maybe not the team's success, but the pitchers have pitched well in the next start. So I don't know if you want to look at the under in that game. Unders at Coors are always a little sketchy, but Miley though, coming off the no hitter, maybe you see another under or another low scoring game. Washington's at Arizona. You got a lot of late action tonight out in the National League, and Max Scherzer, the former Diamondback, goes against Riley Smith. Washington off a win over Philadelphia yesterday, 5-1. They had all unders in that series against Philadelphia, and Scherzer's just dominated recently. Riley Smith hasn't been bad, but Arizona off a few losses to Miami, and now let's see what the Diamondbacks do here as a heavy home underdog. The Marlins continuing their West Coast swing. They're in LA against Clayton Kershaw and the Dodgers, and that's a pretty good pitching matchup tonight. Sandy Alcantara getting him at plus 200. He's a pretty good pitcher for the Marlins. That could be an underlook. And then you see that total around 6.5, 7. That could be a low-scoring game there in LA. St. Louis and San Diego, they met in the playoffs last year in that opening round, and that was a pretty good series actually. Joe Musgrove and Johan Oviedo on the mound, and San Diego, they were a heavy favorite once again. That's a low total too. That Oviedo, who is a guy you probably haven't heard about with the Cardinals, he has, he's pitched well so far for them, and that total definitely tells you a lot. And St. Louis, they pitched well. You had the two unders and push in that first game against Milwaukee, which was 1-1 going to extras, and St. Louis scored 5 runs at the top of the 10th inning to make it 6-1 and push on 7. So the Cardinals, they still pitched pretty well. In the American League, you have the Royals and the White Sox playing a doubleheader. Kansas City's lost 11 in a row. And I've talked about this spot before. Look, it's not 100%, it may not be 70%, but it's profitable because you have these heavy underdogs that cash. And we've seen it a few times this season. We saw it with Detroit at Houston and also at Chicago, in which they were swept, and then they go on the road, and in that first game, they're a heavy underdog, and they win. Now, that's the case with the Royals here. They've lost 11 straight. They just were swept by the Tigers. Now you're getting at a heavy number, and the White Sox, they just swept the Twins. So Kansas City, for as bad as they've been, it's a 7-inning game because it's a doubleheader. Brad Keller, he's lost twice to Chicago. Lucas Giolito's beat Kansas City his last time out. It feels like everything lines up where you're getting a lot of value on the Royals here. That if you can get, Keller's a guy who can throw 6 innings. You can get him to throw 5 innings here, considering it's the shorter game. You get 2 with the Royals and White Sox. I don't feel as good about the second game, but the first one, that could be a look for the Royals. Don't lay the 200 with the White Sox. Just don't do that. There's really not a lot of value there. And also, the White Sox, we know how great they are against left-handed pitchers. Against righties, look, they're still a good lineup, but the lefties ain't thriving against, not necessarily the righties. So maybe the Royals are worth a look there. Yankees and Orioles from Camden Yards. Corey Kluber goes for New York. And the Yankees, even though they got blown out by the Rays in their final game of that series at Tampa Bay, they still have played a lot better. They took 2 of 3 from Tampa Bay. Kluber's pitching better. He's kind of reverting back to his old self. I don't want to say he's a Cy Young candidate, but he's actually looking better than you maybe would have thought. Remember, he was in Texas for one start last year. He got hurt, and that was it. So now he's with the Yankees. You still have Garrett Cole as a workhorse of that rotation, but Kluber's turned into a good number 2. Angels and the Red Sox at Fenway, and Nick Pivetta, that's probably one of the best late season finds last season by Boston after the Phillies traded Pivetta to the Red Sox. It was kind of like, okay, whatever, trade, but he's actually been very good for Boston. And they avoided the sweep against Oakland last night. They get the Angels here, who have struggled a bit, losing a couple to the Astros. And look, Pivetta, it's hard to fade him right now because of the way he's pitching. And Boston finally got the offense going last night. They racked Sean Manaea in that win over Oakland. And the Angels, look, they wave Albert Pujols. I know he's at the end of the line. Anthony Rendon is hurt. Trout missed the game a few nights ago. He's back tonight. And the biggest problem with the Angels is still past Shohei Ohtani, what other starting pitchers are you really relying on? That's been the issue, I feel like, for years for the Angels, that you have Mike Trout, and Ohtani's your best pitcher and also one of your best hitters. You just don't have any other reliable starting pitchers behind Ohtani. I mean, Andrew Heaney has been all right. He struggled of late. He's decent, but you just don't have any big frontline starters with the Angels, and that's going to be tough to compete with in that American League West. Speaking of, Zach Greinke, former Cy Young winner, he goes tonight for the Astros. They snuck past the Rangers last night in extra innings, a game that Texas had first and third, no outs in the top of the 10th. Chris Davis, he grounded to a double play, and then they couldn't score, and then the Astros didn't score in the bottom of the 10th, but then they win it on a wild pitch in the bottom of the 11th. So that game stayed under the total of 9 outs, 3-3 in the third or fourth inning, and they didn't score again until the 11th. So that's kind of a tough loss if you had the over in that game, because it was on a nice little pace there. But Zach Greinke, a heavy favorite tonight against Texas. Royals and White Sox, that's game 2 of that series, and we'll see what Kansas City does in the first game, if they keep their losing streak going or not. Oakland's at Minnesota, and this is a rematch of that 3-game series out the Bay Area that the A's swept from the Twins last month. That had that crazy finish in which Minnesota completely melted down twice. They were up 3 runs. Oakland eventually tied it, sent it to extra innings. Minnesota went up 2 runs in the top of the 10th, and then Oakland scored 3 in the bottom of the 10th, and the Twins had a couple errors in the infield, and it was just a complete disaster. Frankie Montas actually started that game, and he got racked by the Twins, so he's going tonight against Matt Shoemaker, who actually pitched well in his last start. And the thing about Shoemaker is the Twins are 0-3 in his 3 home starts. He was laying 185, and like 140 in his first 3 home starts. Now he's basically at a pick 'em, so I think there's some value there in the Twins. Cleveland's at Seattle, and the Indians have really played well of late. Aaron Savali goes, and he's a short favorite against Chris Flexen. And Cleveland's had a lot of unders recently. They've allowed 2 runs or less in 4 straight games. The Mariners are a nice little under run at home, but Savali's been a good overplay, and that's been more because of Cleveland's offense. They put up 7 runs or more in 5 of the 7 starts, which is pretty strong. And yes, Seattle doesn't have a great lineup, but still, it's a low total there, 7.5. The interleague games tonight: Cubs and Tigers. Detroit's hot right now. Jake Arrieta goes for the Cubs, and Tariq Skubal, he's been one of the worst pitchers in baseball this year. And that one, Cubs are not really that big of a favorite, so that's a little surprising. I mean, I know Detroit's played better, but still. Mets and Rays, that's a really good matchup there at Tropicana Field. The Mets right now, they are leading the National League East. They've won 7 straight. They're 18-13. So that National League East getting a little bit of separation right now. The Mets are doing most of this without Jacob deGrom. He had that one start against Arizona in which he got hurt. But the Mets are doing this with David Peterson is going tonight, who had a little bit of a tough start, but he's pitched better. And Marcus Stroman. There's a lot of good arms in that Mets rotation. Yet, they're doing this with deGrom not at 100%. Syndergaard's not pitching yet. Carlos Carrasco's not pitching yet. They got him from Cleveland in the Lindor trade. And look, the Mets are turning it around slowly but surely. I mean, look, they are +4 in run differential, but hey, whatever, they'll take it. They face Tyler Glasnow tonight, who is Tampa Bay's best pitcher, and that's going to be a tough task. And the Rays coming off that win over the Yankees, and they avoided the sweep. But, hey, the Mets, they've won 7 straight, and they're an underdog tonight, so keep an eye on that. Phillies and Rays from Dunedin. And the Blue Jays, did I say Phillies and Rays? Phillies and Jays. I don't remember what I said. It all rhymes. The Phillies and Jays in Dunedin. They're right outside of Tampa. Steven Matz, the former Met, who, you look back at his numbers against the Phillies, they're not great over the years. Vince Velasquez has actually been decent his last 2 starts for Philadelphia. I don't know how much I trust him moving forward as far as keeping that alive. He's not Zach Wheeler. But Toronto, they're laying 150 to Philadelphia. And the Phillies off that loss to Washington yesterday. Toronto off the sweep of Atlanta. Toronto's actually been a pretty good offensive team at home in this minor league stadium they play in, or their spring training stadium, I should say. They're going to eventually move back to Buffalo, I believe June 1st. So they only have got a few weeks left in Dunedin before they move up north back to Buffalo, back to the old stadium. And then hopefully, I don't know, later this season or next season, they're actually back in Toronto. But the Blue Jays have scored, they've done pretty well at home as far as offensively. And the number is 8 of 11 home games, the Blue Jays have scored 5 or more runs. So high total tonight, but I don't know if I trust Velasquez. You have the DH, which is good. So you lose the pitcher batting, which again is one thing. That goes away. I will not be disappointed at all. Do not need the pitchers batting anymore in baseball. It's a total waste of time. It is a waste. I don't care about strategy and all this other stuff. It's a waste. So we should see some runs there between Philadelphia and Toronto. All right, a couple other things to get to here. Want to remind you, because we have all of this content here that is very good and very informative. Our man Anthony Stabile, who is one of our horse racing experts. You have Stabile, you have Mike Dempsey, and Dempsey has At the Gate every day. Anthony comes in for the big events, for the Kentucky Derby, for the Preakness, for the Belmont, and Anthony has his best bets. He has a video of it. You could find it on our homepage right here. Here's the Big A. And also, if you go to our it's the Preakness up here. It's our horse racing arena. You can get predictions for the Preakness coming up tomorrow. And look, Medina Spirit, who won the Kentucky Derby, that was Bob Baffert's horse, and the questions about, if there was some illegal substance taken by Medina Spirit or not, and he'll be racing coming up tomorrow, and he's the favorite at 9-5. But there's a couple other horses to keep an eye on that Anthony has, so check them out here in the predictions. Go up to the Preakness, click up here, and you can find all the best bets. Also, you can find, if you go to our horse racing arena, the picks for the Preakness. Look, everything's here. The odds, the best bets, it's all here. So you want to get involved with the Preakness, and Mike Dempsey as well has his analysis and picks too. You can find that all at the horse racing arena, the Preakness, VegasInsider.com. Also, WNBA actually gets started tonight. And you have 4 matchups in the WNBA. If you want to check out the analysis there, Nick Andre is one of our newest contributors, and he has several selections on 3 of these games actually tonight. So you can check that out. WNBA starting up, so it gives you something else to bet on, which is always good. And also, Adam Lukenstein, our UFC expert. You can find this interview with he and Tom Cunningham. You click on the UFC 262 Best Bets and Picks. You can find that from Adam. Also, Adam has, if you go to the UFC 262 up here, he has his selections for this event in Houston coming up tomorrow night at the Toyota Center, at the home of the Rockets. So all the best bets, you can peruse this, and he has them all right here from Adam, so check him out for UFC 262. So it's a really loaded weekend. Preakness, UFC tomorrow, so check all of that out. And also we have the Dryden 400, which is coming up on Sunday, so you can find that as well up at Dover, and we'll see if Martin Truex Jr. can win again, because he has won 3 times this year, and Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick have not won yet, which is crazy, in my opinion, considering last year it was all Hamlin and Harvick. Every single race, it felt like, it was one or the other. And you've had so many different winners on the NASCAR circuit this season. But Michael Roberts has the predictions there for the race coming up Sunday in Dover, Delaware. I want to remind you also about our picks. You can buy our picks. I want to skip over to MLB for a second. And I want to talk about Jimmy Adams. 15-0, his last 15 picks in Major League Baseball. So Jimmy, you got to check him out. Today he has 2 plays. He's won 15 straight in Major League Baseball. Winning 15 straight in any sport is amazing. Winning like 7 straight is amazing. He's won 15 in a row. You could check out his picks. You could buy them. They're up for purchase. $29.95 per handicapper, and Jimmy among them with 2 selections for baseball. He right now is the MLB leader as far as money goes. And better jump on the train while Jimmy's red hot. $29.95 for his picks. $39.95 for the guaranteed picks. Basically, the guaranteed pick is 1 selection, best bet for our handicappers. You pay after it wins. If it's a winner, you pay, but also you won. If it doesn't win, then you pay nothing. Simple as that. So you can check out the buy picks pages under MLB, NBA, NHL. The Stanley Cup playoffs actually start tomorrow with the Bruins and the Capitals. And then coming up on Sunday, you have more games. The reason why it's a little disjointed is because of the North Division. They're trying to finish out their schedule. Vancouver had a long COVID layoff, and Vancouver's not going to be in the playoffs, but they're trying to finish up these games more so for seeding and other things. So, because one thing you got to remember, or not remember, but know, is when these, okay, if you haven't followed the NHL this season, there's no conferences. There's 4 divisions. There's the East, the Central, the North, and the West. So no matter who comes out of these divisions, and the top 4 in each division make it, what they're doing is 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3 in every division. So let's just say in the Central, you have Carolina the 1, Nashville's the 4, Florida's the 2, Tampa Bay's the 3. Winners of each of those meet in the second round. Winners of that one then advances to, in a sense, the Final 4. It would be the conference finals in normal years, but now it's like the Final 4. So you have 4 teams coming out of those divisions. Let's just say, just for instance, that you have, we'll just go with all the top teams. If you have Pittsburgh, Carolina, Colorado, and Toronto. Let's say if each of the top teams advance to this Final 4 in the NHL. It reseeds due to points. So there are the possibilities you could have an Eastern team playing a Western team in that semifinal, where Carolina could play, well, Carolina, I think, had the second best record, but let's just say, for instance, Colorado could play Pittsburgh in the semifinals, and then you could have Carolina and Pittsburgh in the Stanley Cup final. That's the way it could work this season. So you have all of that in play. Now, here's my point. The North teams have still got to finish off the season because it reseeds by your regular season points. So the likes of Edmonton, Winnipeg, that they get their season done, they still get more points. What if Edmonton draws Nashville, let's just say, in the reseeding? That's where it all matters. So the teams in the North still got to finish things off and play out their season, so they're a little bit behind. Like Toronto plays Winnipeg tonight. Both teams are in, but it's just about getting points and going from there. Secondly, you have tomorrow Vancouver playing Edmonton, which is kind of odd because Vancouver is out of it, but Edmonton still has got something to play for. Then the playoffs start tomorrow with Boston and Washington, and then on Sunday you have a couple of games with the Islanders Penguins, Lightning Panthers, and Wild Golden Knights. So, that's that. All right. Remember to participate in our Daily Insider Contest. Put up your Vegas Insider ID, your best bet below in the comments section, and you'll be eligible to win a week's worth of handicapper picks of your choice, of one handicapper. It's a $100 value. So drop that in there, user ID, and your best bet. If you don't have a user ID, hit the big yellow register button, and that will lead you to putting it up there, creating a password and ID, and it's all free. With all that being said, I am Kevin Rogers, and I appreciate you watching today's Daily Insider. In case you missed it or you joined us late, we will have the link up all day long until about 7 o'clock tonight, so you can check it out. And if you don't post your winner now, just do it before the game start. That's it. Can't be a live bet. Put up your best bet for the day in the comment section below. And again, no live bets, but it could be a first inning play, it could be a first 5 inning play, it could be a player prop. That is all open for you, and we'll draw the winner. So simple as that, and then we'll let you know on Monday who the winner is for today. So we appreciate you watching and listening and all of that. I am Kevin Rogers. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend betting wherever you're betting. And as always, best of luck with your bets.